Welcome to the Real Life Buyer podcast. In this podcast, you will hear interviews with business owners, entrepreneurs, thought leaders, authors, and technical specialists in their field. These professionals will hasten your development, accelerate your career, and broaden your business know-how. Now, introducing your host, Dave Barr, interviewing with a purchasing twist.
Hello, and welcome to the Real Life Buyer. As demonstrated by such TV shows as Dragon's Den, The Apprentice, and Shark Tank, knowing your numbers is critical to business success. But do you know how to extract and interpret your marketing data to guide your next successful campaign, and how this data may be used to plan and construct your supply chain, for example? My guest today, Caleb Roche, combines his marketing expertise with a thirst for helping businesses expand larger and faster through use of data and analytics. Caleb's helps business owners actually understand marketing strategy and the implementation behind each marketing tactic, thereby helping them to make better marketing decisions. Caleb was one of the youngest students at the University of Central Oklahoma at the age of 17. He finished his bachelor's degree by the age of 20, studied in Manchester, England, well done there, and graduated with his master's degree by the age of 22. So without further ado, I welcome Caleb onto the podcast. Hi, Caleb.
Thanks for having me on the show. I have to say, you might have to be my bio writer after that because I'm blown away.
Well, credit where credit's due. That's a superb resume, I must say. So let's begin with your journey. Can you kind of tell us where your passion for marketing and analytics came from? And perhaps you can share some of the ups and downs of your journey as owner of Caleb Roche Consulting.
Yeah, so lots of ups and downs, as you probably know, within the business world. And so where I truly got my first passion for marketing was really understanding what makes people buy things. I mean, it's the most simple, but kind of crazy thing to think about if you think about it in a broad perspective, because like what actually shapes our decision making across purchasing, across how we do things, how we buy things. And so that's what really got me started. So when I was younger, I started seeing in the business world, I always thought I wanted to be an attorney. And so I thought it was really cool, all the arguing and the case, and you watch all these cool shows that you get in front and you say, I rest my case, Your Honor. And then I got into it and started doing some things and realized that about 99% of attorneys don't actually do that every day. They do a lot of paperwork. And so what I realized is, as much as I love paperwork and data, it's probably not my true passion. And so outside of that, I started realizing that I had this desire and this dream that I wanted to learn how to make people tick and purchase things and how to make better marketing strategies. And so I went to school for marketing, obviously, and I worked for a couple of different companies. And my last company before I kind of went out on my own was a large quick service restaurant chain in the United States. And so what I did there was consumer insight. So I understood, we tested data and we looked at products and said, what is, this double-decker cheeseburger? Are we going to roll this out? And is it going to do really well in markets? Or, is it going to be too salty? Does it have too much garlic on it? So understanding what those types of things. And so I started doing that for about 2 years and realized that I absolutely hate working for someone else. It's probably a sad thing, but I don't like being told what to do on like a day-to-day, you can't go to a kid's doctor's appointment because we have a meeting, or there's really not much flexibility. And so I decided that I wanted to do something on my own, which led to me starting a consulting company on the side. Got to the point during COVID where it was actually generating more revenue than I was making at my salaried job. And so I looked to my wife and I said, so how do you feel about this? Probably a terrible idea, but let's do it. So she agreed. And so we launched about 2 years ago full time, and we're coming up on 2 years actually. And so we've had a lot of ups and downs, a lot of good decisions, a lot of bad decisions. One of the biggest business mistakes that I've made in the past is not treating money like it's my own. And so when I say that, we do a lot of ad spend for clients and a lot of billing, and I feel very scared to ask for money when they owe me money. And so I would sit there and I'd say, well, I think you owe me like $3,000, but no worries on paying just whenever you have the money. Like I know things are going on. And before you know it, I have like $10,000 past due on clients. And now I'm like, how am I going to pay my bills kind of thing? So we've had lots of ups and downs, but over the past year, it's been a really good trajectory across helping, business owners kind of market their business. And so we've had a lot of ups and downs, as you know, but it's been a positive thing over the past year.
Yeah, the main thing is, I guess you don't regret making that decision in the first place.
Yeah. Well, and what I've learned is the more you go through things and you have to learn them in real life, the more that they kind of hit home a little bit better, because if you don't have those experiences, then you would never know why you do things. But now we auto bill in the very beginning of the month because we know that we need to get our money up front for most clients.
Yeah. They say cash flow is king, isn't it? So,
yeah, it is. It is true. You gotta sometimes take the emotion out of business sometimes, as much as you don't want to do it always. It's a big thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And asking for money often is one of the most difficult of things, especially when you build a relationship with people.
Yep. When like some of the transactional side of things, you build a relationship with these people, especially with working with smaller businesses. And as a small business, you feel like you're friends at this point. And so you understand sometimes the struggles that they're going through. And so what you don't realize is the struggles they're going through when you're being helpful. It's great, but at the same time, they're going to lead you to go through struggles on your own. And so it's kind of a windfall effect, which is unfortunate.
Yeah, absolutely. So you've touched on one of the sort of aspects of marketing there where you went out and spoke to people face to face, I guess, getting some of this feedback. And there's kind of three marketing data sources I'm interested in. There's the social media side of things. There's the face to face, which we just mentioned. And then obviously what comes back from people's websites. So if we can start with the social media type of things, I'd like to hear your thoughts on, let's we say, three kind of areas. Firstly, the systems and processes someone should use to maximize customer reach. The kind of holy grail for many people is how to get those customers in. And just doing things randomly is probably not the best way of going about things. So can you talk about systems and processes that you think people should bear in mind and consider?
Yeah. So on the systems and processes side, I think one of the most important pieces of social media is getting original content. And so I think it's been kind of a widely debated topic over the past 10 to 20 years as algorithms have changed and as social media platforms have changed. But what we're seeing, and you'll hear it 3,000 times, but it used to be quantity over quality. And now at this point, it's now quality over quantity. And so, it went from a shift of how much content can you get out into the marketplace to what is the content that you're producing and how is it relating to your clients? And it's harder to get reach at this point off of 10 posts than it used to be. And so one of the biggest pieces that we say is look at the content that you're developing on the process and system side, and how can you improve that from an actual content standpoint? So can you hire a professional photographer? Do you have a photo setup that you can have? So the first piece of the systems and processes is actually developing content that you're in or your clients are in that you can show what you're doing, and start that process of actually developing original content. And then outside of that, I do think they're all common things, but social media scheduling, I think, is a really important piece. It's really important to have a really good platform, and there's hundreds of them out there. We use a platform called Loomly right now, but there's Hootsuite and there's Buffer and there's I think Mention, and there's a couple other ones. And I know Meta's even created their own scheduling platform as well, which can reduce some costs. But what we recommend looking at is you'll hear all of these statistics around. You need to post at when your customers are online or when they're on Facebook. And so a lot of them provide these data analysis tools that you can see, okay, my audience is on at 10 o'clock at night, which is great to know. But the thing you have to take into account in your systems and processes is that doesn't mean to post at 10 a.m. or 10 p.m. That means that you need to post around 9:30 so that it can syndicate to the first couple of people to interact with the algorithm, and then push it out so that it gets delivered at the time that everyone is online. So that's one of the biggest pieces, is understanding how does the data come into play and what do we build a system or process around? Do we batch content and submit it around 9:30 at night? And then the other piece to think about as well is not only is trends important to look at, but look at events that are happening. If Monday at, let's say, what's the average time of a football game around there? Is it like 6:30, 7 p.m.?
Yeah, it depends on which day of the week, and obviously weekends and such things vary. So yeah.
Yeah. So let's say like a Wednesday at 7 p.m. there's a football game. Let's say your ideal time to post is 7 p.m. on Wednesdays, or even 6 or 8. If you're posting around the time of a football game that your loyal supporters, your customers are around, they're not going to be looking at their phone at that time. And so on your systems and processes, when you're planning, you have to develop around when your customers are online. Then you have to look at the environmental effects as well of what events are happening that could pull my customers around. So that might limit my reach as well.
That's good advice. There's two things that jump to mind on there. One of the things you said about the volume of posts. Now, I still hear quite regularly, oh, you've got to post every day, 3 times a day, and so on and so forth. Is that now old news? If you've got to discount that, is one post a day good enough? Or, where is the sweet spot?
So I'm probably putting myself out here to get murdered online, but we typically recommend kind of our smaller business and mid-level until you get to an enterprise level. We think the best time is between 2 to 5 posts a week. So we think one post a day is really healthy, but at the same time, you want to make sure the content that you're producing, that you have enough content to develop that. And so it's important to look and say, do I have 120 to 150 pieces of content that I could post realistically in a year? And if so, I'm going to post 3 or so times a month or a week. But at the same time, if you can develop 600, then that leads open to a lot more content. And so we believe that 3 to 5 times is a really healthy range, because anything above that, you're pushing out a lot of information to your consumers. And consumers, as much as they love digesting content, they're going to get tired of seeing 2 to 3 posts a day from your social platforms.
Absolutely right.
Which you'll hear different, you have a lot of different experts that will say it's good to develop 3 to 5 different pieces of content a day. And I can't, I couldn't put an argument against that, because I think it's kind of apples and oranges. I think there's pros and cons to both, but I think maximizing reach while delivering really good content that is original, you have to stay between 2 to 5 times a week.
Right. The other aspect I'm going to question you on is the time, because what if you have a global business, you have a global reach that you want to attract? It's not just your local, within your own country or continent, so to speak. So if you've got potential audience in Australia, America, China, UK, they're all over the place what time they're up and about. So, where is the right time to post when you have a global audience?
That's a tough one. I think you have to look at the data as well. But in my opinion, I think you find the times that are early enough that someone would be scrolling around social media, because at this point, everyone gets on social media around 6 to 7 a.m., depending on, what they're doing and what their life is like. And then they also get on after the work time, so 6, 7 o'clock at night. And so there are good balance sides where you can either post in the evening and you're hitting your global audience, typically with the time zones that you're hitting them in the morning when they're starting their day. So you're hitting your audience start of the day in, let's say Europe, and then you're hitting, California in the afternoon or evening, and vice versa. And so I think you have to look at that if you have a global audience and say, when is the optimal time that it's not too early or too late on one side, but at the same time, vice versa, it's not too early or it's not too late on the other side.
Yeah, it's just trying to catch that sweet spot that, most people at some point will pick it up, be it first thing in the morning, as you said, or maybe for somebody else, it's last thing at night before they switch the lights out, I guess. So
I think it really relies on the content that you're posting as well. Is your content focused around, let's say, Europe? And if it is around Europe, if you have content specifically delivered for Europe, deliver at the time that you think is going to be best or that you see from that European standpoint, and don't focus on tailoring every piece of content around the time for both. Because then, if you're delivering it to America plus Europe and your American audience isn't going to resonate as well with it, why are you focusing on when your American audience is going to see it? I mean, it's good to think about, but you have to tailor content as well. So I think there's a balancing act that you have to have.
Great. The second part of this I've written down as crafting a clear message. I'm really pleased you said it's not about volume. You're better off spending more time getting something really clear and seen to be of value, I guess. So forget the 3 posts a day kind of thing, but focus on 2 really great pieces of content in the week. Is that something you think is right? Spend your time on getting such a very clear message that really does resonate.
Yeah. And I think there's a limit to it. I mean, I don't think you spend 90% of your day thinking about content and how you position yourself, every day, because you got to run a business at the same time, or you have to be productive. But I do think there needs to be a heavier skew on positioning and what you are, the way that you're portraying yourself in the marketplace, the copy that you're writing, the images, because if you think about it from a broad perspective, developing a product that delivers exceptional value to consumers or your clients. The analogy that I used yesterday with a client that we were talking is, are you familiar with a TV show called Better Call Saul? It came off of Breaking Bad. So there's a TV show that has this lawyer, and he's a criminal lawyer.
Yeah, I recognize it now. Yeah, absolutely.
He kind of has a beat down car, and he shows up and he gets his parking ticket or his parking passes validated, and most of the time it doesn't. He doesn't have the time. He doesn't have the money to pay for them. And so you have that type of lawyer. And then you have what's considered your suits lawyer, which is corporate lawyer. You walk into the office, you're given a bottle of smart water, and it's chilled at 55 degrees and came from Alaskan water. And so you have these 2 differences, and one can't fit into the other. And so if you're developing a product around the Better Call Saul model, focus on that. And at the same time, if you're focused on the suits and delivering this experience, neither are bad experiences. You just have to figure out what client you want and what product you want, and then to really focus on that. And so the content that you're developing, if you know that your clients are online, it's really important to develop positioning around actually putting out your service or product that you have and developing positioning to get those ideal customers in there.
Brilliant, brilliant. Then the third aspect I wanted to mention was how and what data to mine. When you think we have so many platforms, you've got Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, et cetera, I guess they're not all equal. And I guess you can't get all the same data. What's your take on that?
That becomes a big game because, what data is actually important, because impressions are a big thing now where, oh my gosh, I got 35,000 impressions on TikTok, or, I made 35,000 views on X, or I got a YouTube short that went, 3,000. But what is the true value that brings? It's bringing you awareness, it's getting you, but how do you know that those clients, those people watching are actually valuable buyers? Because if I'm in the B2B space and I put out a TikTok around my a day in the life, 99% of the people that are watching are, soccer fans that aren't, there's different pieces. They're going to watch it, but how much of an impact am I making? And so I think you have to look at the data that you're receiving and take it with a grain of salt. What do impressions actually mean? And what is the value that I'm getting from this? We're getting awareness, but are we reaching the right audience? Are we looking at that? And so I think every platform has their own data analysis platform on the back end that you can look at. And I think those provide a really healthy balance of understanding where are people at in the world that are watching your content or digesting your content? How often are they seeing it? What's your click-through rates? So pieces like that I think are really important that do vary across platforms, but I think there's some foundational pieces of data that you can look at. Impressions, how long people are watching videos, if it's a video platform, how many people are actually engaging with your content, liking, sharing, commenting. There's the foundations, but I think you can't get stuck with one of those and think that that's the end all be all at the same time.
Right. Okay. That's interesting. Let's move on to face-to-face marketing. You could call this perhaps a little bit old school these days. People actually talking face-to-face. That's amazing. But
people do that nowadays.
yeah, there's a few left, I think. Yeah. Do you still feel it has a place? And if so, how is it best used? What's its best use for?
I do think so. And it truly depends on the business because, more of an e-commerce level business, this would not really fit in. This is more towards maybe a little bit more of a B2B or B2C relationship where there's still like a relationship involved. But I truly do think that face-to-face makes a big impact because you're able to develop a relationship with your customer, whether it's on a granular level, you have that buyer that or at the same time, on a broad scale for a buyer level, what are your customers actually wanting and what pieces of your product, how can you develop that to make a better product? And that's where the face-to-face truly comes in, is what I believe, because as much as we love our products that we develop and we think they're the best, there's always a way that we can innovate. There's always a way that we can make a product different. And if we were to think about it, if I were to think about my products and services and how I could develop them, if I developed only off of my beliefs and thoughts, I'd probably develop the wrong product. You have to talk to your consumers and understand what are the pain points, what do you want out of this product, what are the good pieces, what are the bad pieces, because they're probably going to have a much different perception of that product than you are, because there's that piece. And so the consumer is using it on a day-to-day basis versus a person selling it is going to have a much different idea of what needs to improve or what needs to go away or what needs to come. And so I do think that face-to-face is so important because you can actually understand how to develop products that fit within what your customers actually want.
Yeah, absolutely. And so this is probably the best use for physical products where people can touch it, feel it, smell it, feel the quality and experience something rather than just visual experience or audio experience. But actually, it's the touching and feeling and having the conversation, getting people's understanding of what they mean out is where the benefits are, I guess.
Absolutely. And I do think there is a time and a place for B2B or more of a non-product that you can, develop, because there is a lot of experience that goes into it. If you're in the B2B space, what is the experience that you're generating for a business and how can you adapt that? But it makes a lot more sense on the buying side for an e-commerce level or a product side. What are you actually delivering, and what when the product comes into their hands, what is the experience that they're actually having from that and usability?
Yeah. Okay. The third thing I mentioned was when people have their own website. And now most businesses, obviously these days do. In fact, a lot of people have their own website nowadays. Some people will rigorously maintain them and refine them, while others drop it out there and leave it as a kind of static billboard. Now, what kind of information can people grab out of websites? Where's the benefit of the data analysis there?
There's a lot there too, which is good. So there's a lot of information around usability, mobile performance, and then on the back end side as well of user data. And so I guess we'll break it down into 3 different areas that we can kind of analyze and kind of determine what we would use. So on a much more granular level, there's obviously Google Analytics and Google Search Console that plays a big role into websites at this point. Google Analytics allows you to dive into the data of how long people are staying on your website, how many people are going, what pages people are going through, mapping, what is the process? Do they go from your homepage to your services to contact and then submit a form? Or do they go from home to bio and then jump off the page? And so there's a lot that we could go into that, but I think there's a lot of data that you can generate from each specific area of Google Analytics. So are people going to the right pages? Are you navigating people like a map to the pages that you want them to take them through that buying journey? Are they going to the about, to then the services, then the contact, to where they're already conditioned on who you are, what service you provide, how expensive you are, whatever that comes across. And then they're ready to send you that message. So when you make that touch point, they understand who you are. And we already have that somewhat of a relationship built. Now, if your website they go from bio to contact us or right to contact us and submit that form, they still don't know what you're doing. And so you've led them down the wrong path. And so one of the big pieces on Google Analytics is understanding user data. Where are they coming in from? How are they staying on your site? And then what's the process after that? Then there's the piece of the actual website, like the actual user experience of the website. And so that's where you can use tools such as Hotjar. There's Lucky Orange. There's a bunch of them coming out to where you can actually identify heat maps. Where are people clicking on the site? How long are they scrolling on the website, each page? So you can see, okay, on the homepage, let's say we have 30 different, scrolling features, and 99% of the people are only making it past page, feature number 2. And there's no button for them to go anywhere. So they're only making it to 2. There's no navigation outside of the header tab. We need to provide more relevant information because they're obviously not getting what they need from that very beginning because they don't know where to go. And so pieces like that you can identify on your website and look at where they're going, where like the process that they're taking, what they're clicking on, what they're not looking at. Those are big pieces because your website, kind of like the product side, you might think your website is the coolest website in the world, but 99% of people will have a different opinion. You'll have some people that love it, some people that don't like it. Some people think it's too modern. Some people think it's too traditional. So that's where you have to look at what your majority of customers are doing and look at the data from that piece. And then on the third side, it's important to look at your mobile performance and desktop performance and say, how quickly is my site loading? There's like little elements that say, if it doesn't load within 3 seconds, you've already created a bad experience for your client because now they can't, they're patiently waiting for your site to load. So now they already have this check mark against you, that black mark against you that says, well, it took them a while to load the website. So now I'm already it's not a huge thing, but it gives off this negative connotation.
Yeah, I guess people are pretty short on time. Patience isn't something that's in bucket loads anymore. And I can certainly get frustrated when you're looking and waiting for things to upload. So I can understand that. It's interesting you're particularly talking about the journey that the customers follow. So as you rightly say, you're used to your website, you know where things are. And, as you say, if it wasn't the way it was, you wouldn't leave it the way it was. But the best journey is actually to follow the footsteps of the person doing the journey themselves. And by following their footsteps, you're seeing, as you rightly say, when they hop off or they move somewhere else, why do they move there? Is there, 80% of your people moving in a certain way? Do they hop off at a certain time? What is it that's the trigger to the negative, perhaps, behaviors?
Like on the product side too, if you think about it, if you have products that you're selling online, and you have some sort of product that you're trying to sell, if you've basically hidden it from your homepage and there's not you have to dig through filters or page 3 to get to that product, you have a much lower chance of someone actually purchasing that because it's going to take them 6 pages to find it. And so you have to figure out what are your defining products or services or pages that you really want dominant, and then lead the user through that experience so that it's much easier for them to navigate because it's so important.
Yeah, certainly. When I look for products with these online catalogs, you put what you think is logical. I want to find product X, to type it in. And can you find it half the time? It's a nightmare trying to find that product. The only way to get there is to click a link that you saw somewhere which brought you to the page. And that can be extremely frustrating when you can't find what you want.
Yep.
Yeah.
And you want to make it as easy as possible for consumers because, that they're going to find somewhere. There's so much accessibility that most products you can find it somewhere else. And so if I can't find it somewhere, I'm going to go right to Amazon, or I'm going to go right to, some other local shop, and so
Yeah.
the accessibility of that is so important to make sure that you're optimized.
Yeah. Now, we've talked about those three aspects, and there's a lot of data we talked about, and you've mentioned a number of software systems that help you to interpret that data. Is there a one for all system? Everybody thinks of Excel for analyzing numbers and such, isn't it? But that's definitely not, the right system for marketing analysis. Do you have to have specific software for these different areas, or is there something out there that you can buy one lot of software and import all that information for analysis?
Kind of a catch-22. So there are softwares. There's a Zoho, which is kind of a joint CRM. They're kind of a Salesforce type platform that allows you to integrate different analytical platforms. And so they even have like a Zoho Social where you can schedule out content, and they have a subscription. And so you can analyze data, you can move it to a spreadsheet. So if a company's looking to analyze it all on their own and have it one system, Zoho is probably our best recommendation from what we've seen in the marketplace right now, because it consolidates all your information. You can look at reporting, you can import Google Analytics or Google Ads, see what customers are coming from. But if someone's looking to do it on more of a less consolidated basis, there's a lot of tools out there that are very specified for specific things. And so whether that be website data, looking at, like that Lucky Orange or that Hotjar, where you're not going to be able to get the level of data from that consolidated area of Zoho, because they're focused on building a product that works for everything versus just one specific product. And so while Zoho has some great capabilities, sometimes it makes it a little bit better if you want to dive deeper into the data, is to find specific platforms that are capable for each thing. Looking at a data analysis platform like Agency Analytics that allow you to import all of your information, import it or export it to a CSV file or however you analyze data on your own, and look at that data specifically, and then use your platform like a Hotjar or a Lucky Orange to analyze website data and combine them as much as possible. So there's pros to using a consolidated system. It makes it easy. It helps roll the ball of actually starting to do it. But on the flip side, sometimes you get a lot better features and accessibility and usability from having specified different pieces that you use of software.
Right. Okay. So we talked a lot about data, and you've talked a lot of what some people may refer to as technical terminology. And that's quite scary. It's one thing getting the data, but interpreting the data, knowing what it means and what to do with it is a completely different ball game. How does somebody go about that? Can you only do that through somebody like yourself, or are there places that you can go to that educate you on what to understand by what the data is telling you?
It depends on how patient and how much time someone wants to invest, because nowadays there's YouTube videos, there's help guides, there's articles on how to analyze data. And truly, I believe there's a lot of valuable information on all of those. As you see, there's a lot of people that start an agency, specifically marketing, off of watching YouTube videos, which is absolutely incredible if you think about that, because they've learned all this knowledge. And so from an accessibility standpoint, there's so much information out there that there is an ability for a business owner to see all that data, understand how to interpret it without having to hire a marketing firm or a marketing consultant. But where I truly believe the value is, and what keeps me in business, is the awareness of how it's affecting other businesses and other industries, and what's working and what isn't on a broad perspective. Because if you think about it, every article that you read, every YouTube video that you watch, there's some sort of bias, or there's some type of skew. And so someone might have a perception that impressions are the only thing that you need on a campaign, or impressions are the only thing that you need on your website. Then you might talk to someone else or read something else that says impressions are junk. What you need is, longer page time, someone staying on your page for longer. So there's a lot of different conflicting opinions that you'll see sometimes. And so what our advice is either, if you have the capabilities to hire a professional, it's always the best thing. Obviously, it keeps us in business. So I'll keep recommending it for the rest of my life. But outside of that, if someone wants to save budgets, or they don't have the resources, or they want to learn on their own just for the sake of their own, I think it's important to just dive into resources, articles, and understand, what are you holding yourself to? What do you believe and what don't you? And how does it correlate in your own mind? And does that work? Yes. If it does, go with that. And if it doesn't make sense, or if it's not working, adjust your expectations or adjust your learnings to what fits.
Right. I think that's probably a good moment so people can, you've talked about yourself and what you do. Where can people find out about you, your company, perhaps learn some of the things, the tips and tricks that you share?
Well, we don't have a website. We don't have any social media. What if I spent all this time telling people that they need to be on social media and websites and I have any of those? No, just kidding. So they can find us online. We have a website, crocheconsulting.com, and that's going to be CROCHE consulting.com. What that website is basically provides a little bit more about us, our services. And what we do is we provide audits for existing businesses and free strategy sessions. And so we operate off of a model of no obligation strategy sessions. So we don't get into strategy sessions and say, oh, well, I think you need social media management services right away. We like to analyze what is the budget, what is your current resources, how are you allocating those, what are you doing really strong? Because in the all reality, we want to guide people in the right decision making. And as much as we like making money, we want to make sure that we take care of small businesses because we are a small business as well.
Yeah. And it'll keep people coming back. As they grow and expand, then they'll always go back to the same person they trust as well. So
exactly.
Key thing there. Good. Now, one of the things that we talked about previously before this podcast was how data can obviously heavily influence marketing strategies. And that also has an impact on supply chain strategy. So for instance, you could get a whole bunch of data back, which gives you anticipated sales volumes for forecasting, pricing strategy, or product needs we mentioned earlier on. All those things need to be understood. And you want to make sure that you hit the mark when you're obviously reaching out to your customers and servicing them. Can you share an example or two of where you've seen this kind of data being used to prepare or pivot supply chains?
Yeah, absolutely. I think we've had the best examples over the past 2 or 3 years with everything going on. Probably the most relevant and best data that we can find. So perfect example, across QSRs, I think there was a lot of data that showed, if a company didn't have established supply chain, lines established within their own company. So let's say, McDonald's didn't have their own chicken producer. If they're relying on a producer to produce chicken, and especially in the United States, I don't know internationally how large this was affected, but we had a chicken shortage for quite some time. And what that stemmed from was we had in the United States, like Texas area, had a big snowstorm. It knocked out a bunch of plants. And what that did was it stopped supply for quite some time to where we hit some sort of a lag, and it didn't allow for them to produce and they couldn't catch up. And so we got to this point where the entire US is under this assumption that we're under a chicken shortage. So not only are chains affected, but grocery stores. So at that point, let's say we've developed a chicken sandwich that's going to hit the market. It's going to be great. We've talked to our suppliers. They can, rely on this specific amount of supply. Well, then there's 2 environmental factors that come into play. Can they actually deliver on that product? And 2, are we going to have an increased demand because people can't find chicken anywhere else? And so they're going to turn to our chicken sandwich. So there's 2 different factors that can come into play. So it's important to pivot on those types of things, because if you want to roll out this chicken sandwich, you have to look at, say, off of our increased demand that we expect, can we deliver on this problem? And at the same time, can our supplier deliver on the same side of problem? Because if we make this promise that if we spend all this money, from a quick service restaurant, developing this campaign, rolling out, saying, hey, we are launching this new chicken sandwich, and within 2 days it goes away and it's not available because supply chain issues, you've wasted so much money. And that's what happened in Oklahoma, specifically in Oklahoma, with one restaurant chain that we worked with. Was they launched a couple of different products and they ran out of specific things such as pickles, to where they're rolling out these things and people are trying to order them and they're having to go out and say, well, I'm sorry, we don't have pickles. Or even on a little level of styrofoam cups, their branded styrofoam cups were out. So they were having to run to grocery stores and purchase these styrofoam cups because they couldn't get enough straws. So there were so many things that, again, you can't take into account, but you have to prepare, because you can build this perfect product. But if you understand that there's some sort of potential watch out to look for, you have to be so cognizant of that to be prepared to pivot. Because if you develop this great chicken sandwich and you know that you're not going to have enough chicken to deliver, you should probably hold off on that, because you're going to make a terrible experience for your clients.
Absolutely. Okay, coming close to our end of time now, but there's one thing I'd like to ask you. Obviously, there's a lot of things going out on right now in social media, in marketing. Everybody seems to be into marketing at the moment. What are you most excited about that's coming up? Or what are you working on that makes you most excited?
Ooh. One of the things that we've been specifically working on for some of our clients is understanding the impact of each channel and what the future channels. So there's now a big thing across Web 3.0 and AI and augmented reality. And so what I'm excited to look for is the potential for how can we develop new marketing strategies or ways to reach consumers through the new technology that comes out. And so while I don't fully understand VR, and I probably never will, even something along the lines of how does marketing within VR play of someone playing some sort of game and seeing some sort of product placement for a local business that they would have never expected to see. And I, not specifically for that example, but with the accessibility of data, with the increased channels that are going out, I think from a small to a large size business, there are so many opportunities to make a lot more brand touches and impacts for our consumer that are going to be much more affordable and much easier to implement on their own, that I'm excited to see what happens over the next, let's say, 5 to 10 years from that.
Brilliant. Well, that's been a really interesting conversation. There's an awful lot of information for people to take on board. A lot of scary terminology that you use there. But nevertheless, at least people know what to look for and obviously be aware of what's happening out there. So I really appreciate your input today, Caleb. And thanks very much for joining the show.
Yeah, thank you, Dave. It was so much fun and appreciate you having me on.
Welcome. Cheers, mate. Bye.
Cheers.
So there's another Real Life Buyer podcast. I do hope you enjoyed it and it's given you some ideas and inspiration for greater action and achievement. If you are a purchasing or a supply chain professional, business owner or director, come and join my Facebook group, the Purchasing and Supply Chain Community Hub, a safe place to engage with like-minded, friendly people. See you soon. Bye.